Every relationship has its own currency. For some, it's whispered secrets and inside jokes. For others, it's grand gestures and public declarations. For the past 2 years with Chloe, I thought our currency was trust, a quiet, steady accumulation of faith in each other. It turns out I was mistaken. Our relationship was transactional, and the currency was my American Express. I just hadn't been reading the statements. My name isn't important. I was just the guy who paid the bills. The guy who believed that when his girlfriend said she was a little short this month, it was a temporary state, not a business model. I'd always been the provider type, the one who gets a quiet satisfaction from taking care of someone they love. I'd cover our ridiculously expensive dinners, her online shopping sprees, her car payment. I saw it as an investment in our future, funding the life I thought we were building. She called me generous. Looking back, the word she was searching for was gullible. Chloe was the kind of beautiful that made you want to do stupid things. She had a laugh that could disarm a bomb squad and a way of looking at you that made you feel like you were the only person in a crowded room. For the first year, it was perfect. Then, things started to shift. The late nights at work became more frequent. The texts from her new friend from the gym, Derek, became a constant buzz from her perpetually face-down phone. When I'd ask, she'd just smile, that disarming smile. "Don't be silly," she'd say, tucking a stray piece of hair behind my ear. "He's just a friend. You know you're my one and only." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. The talk of a vacation started about a month ago. "I'm just so burnt out, babe," she'd sigh, draping herself over the back of the couch while I was trying to work. "I need to feel sand between my toes. We need to get away, just the two of us." She'd pull up pictures of Bali, of overwater bungalows and turquoise waves, her eyes sparkling with a desire I mistook as a longing for me. I told her we'd plan something soon, maybe in the fall when my workload eased up. That wasn't fast enough for her. I should have seen the impatience in her eyes for what it was, a deadline. Her plan was already in motion. She just needed the funding to clear. The Bali conversation didn't die. It became the soundtrack to our evenings. 2 days ago, it reached its crescendo. "You know," she said, scrolling through her phone, pointedly showing me another picture of a pristine beach, "our 2-year anniversary is next week. This would be the perfect way to celebrate." She looked up at me, her lower lip pushed out in that way she knew I couldn't resist. "Don't you think we deserve it?" I felt a familiar pressure in my chest, the pressure to provide, to say yes, to make her happy. But something held me back. "Chloe, it's just not a good time. A trip like that is thousands of dollars." "Oh, don't worry about the money," she'd said, waving a dismissive hand. "I can be smart about it. Find a deal. I'll handle the planning, you just relax." It was a master class in manipulation. She made it sound like she was doing me a favor, and like a fool, I let her. I didn't hand her my card, but I'd long ago saved the number in her Amazon account for convenience. I never imagined she'd use it for anything else. That was my mistake. My trust was the vulnerable thing, the open door she just walked right through. The inciting incident didn't come with a bang, but with a buzz. A notification from my Amex app yesterday morning while I was brewing coffee. "Thank you for your purchase of $9, 432.15 with Bali Air." My heart stopped. $9,000. She'd actually done it. My first thought was a flash of anger, quickly replaced by a wave of resignation. Okay, I guess we're going to Bali. Then, I opened the email confirmation to check the dates, and that's when I saw it. The passenger manifest. Passenger 1, Chloe Williams. Passenger 2, Derek Vance. My whole world just tilted on its axis. Every late night, every whispered phone call, every "he's just a friend" suddenly snapped into sharp, brutal focus. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was making me pay for her romantic getaway with another man. The sheer audacity of it left me breathless. If you've ever had that feeling, that ice water in the veins moment where you realize you've been played for a complete fool, you know what I'm talking about. Do me a solid and hit that like button and maybe subscribe, because you are not going to want to miss how this plays out. I stood there in the kitchen, the steam from my forgotten coffee mug ghosting around my clenched fist. My phone felt like a 20-pound weight. Passenger 2, Derek Vance, the name echoed in the silent apartment. A two-word wrecking ball that had just demolished the last 2 years of my life. I couldn't move. I just stared at the screen, reading the names over and over, as if a different combination of letters might magically appear. Chloe Williams. Derek Vance. Chloe Williams. Derek Vance. The sound of the front door unlocking jolted me back to reality. Keys clattered into the ceramic bowl by the door, the one I bought her on our first trip together to a little coastal town. "Babe, I'm home. I brought croissants." Her voice was bright, musical, and utterly oblivious. It was the voice of a woman who thought she'd just pulled off the perfect crime. She breezed into the kitchen, a paper bag in her hand, a triumphant smile on her face. The smile faltered when she saw me. She must have seen the corpse of our relationship reflected in my eyes. "Hey," she said, her voice now cautious. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I didn't say anything. I just turned my phone and held it up for her to see. Her eyes scanned the screen. I watched the recognition dawn, followed by a flicker of panic, and then something else. Something cold and hard. The mask didn't just slip. She ripped it off and threw it on the floor. Her disarming smile curdled into a sneer. "Oh," she said, her voice dripping with a casual cruelty I'd never heard before. "You saw that. I was wondering when you'd check." She tossed a bag of croissants onto the counter. "Well, I guess that saves me a conversation when I get back." The sheer nerve of it, the absolute lack of remorse, sent a tremor of rage through me. "When you get back, you were just gonna go? With him? On my dime? And then come back here?" She laughed. It wasn't her usual laugh, the one that could disarm bomb squads. This one was sharp and ugly. "God, you're so naive." "Of course I was." "What, did you really think I was going to spend 2 weeks in Bali with you? You work all the time. You're boring." She took a step closer, her eyes scanning me with open contempt. "You're a wonderful provider. A human ATM. That's your function. But Derek? Derek's fun. Derek's hot. Derek doesn't ask me to split the bill on a bottle of water." Every word was a perfectly aimed dart, each one tipped with the poison of a truth I'd refused to see. The air left my lungs. She wasn't just admitting to cheating. She was rubbing my face in the fact that my love, my generosity, my entire identity in our relationship was, to her, nothing more than a convenient financial tool. "So yeah," she said, grabbing her purse from the counter, "I'm gonna go. I've still got some packing to do." She paused at the kitchen doorway and looked back at me, a final, pitying smirk on her face. "Don't cancel the card, okay? I still need to book the rental car in Denpasar. Think of it as alimony." And then she was gone. The front door clicked shut, leaving me in a silence that was louder than any argument. It was the silence of a house that was no longer a home. The silence of being utterly and completely alone. The hurt was a physical thing, a crushing weight in my chest. But as I stood there, staring at the booking confirmation on my phone, the hurt began to crystallize. It sharpened, cooled, and hardened into something else entirely. It was a single diamond-hard point of resolve. Alimony, she'd called it, a severance package. Okay, I could work with that. My hand was steady as I tapped the airline's customer service number. She wanted a trip to remember. I was going to make sure she got one. My finger hovered over the call button for Bali Air, but I hesitated. Canceling the tickets felt too simple, too clean. It would get my money back, maybe after a fight. But it wouldn't fix the gaping hole she'd torn in my life. It wouldn't erase the sneer on her face or the casual cruelty in her voice. No, a simple refund wasn't justice. But first things first, I had to try the proper channels. This was fraud, plain and simple. The system would see that. My first call was to American Express. I navigated the automated menu with a grim sense of purpose, finally reaching a human in the fraud department. I explained the situation to a woman named Brenda, whose voice was unnervingly calm. "So, to be clear, sir," she said after I'd laid out the whole sordid tale, "the card was not physically stolen?" "No," I admitted. "The number was saved on her Amazon account." "And you authorized her to have that information saved?" "Yes, for convenience, for groceries, for household things. Not for a $10,000 vacation with her affair partner." My voice was rising, and I forced it back down. There was a pause, the soft clicking of a keyboard. "I see. And this person, Ms. Williams, is your live-in girlfriend?" "Ex-girlfriend," I bit out, "as of about 20 minutes ago." "I understand your frustration, sir," Brenda said, with the kind of practiced empathy that means nothing. "However, because you had an established relationship and had previously granted Ms. Williams access to your account information, this doesn't meet the definition of third-party fraud. From our perspective, this is a domestic dispute over an authorized user's purchase." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Authorized? I did not authorize her to spend nearly $10,000 to fly to Bali with another man. How is that not fraud? "It's a civil matter, sir, not a criminal one. Our recommendation is that you resolve the matter of the funds directly with Ms. Williams." "Resolve it with her, the woman who told me to think of it as alimony. The system wasn't just failing me. It was siding with her. My trust, my willingness to provide for her was now my legal liability. I was being punished for my own generosity." A cold dread washed over me. I was on my own. After a few more circular, infuriating exchanges, I hung up, my hand trembling with a rage that had nowhere to go. My next call was even more desperate. I dialed the non-emergency police line. Surely theft was theft. A different, dispassionate voice answered. I explained the situation again, feeling more pathetic with each word. The officer on the other end sighed, a sound of pure, bureaucratic boredom. "Sir, did you file a police report when she first used the card without your permission? This is the first time she's done something like this." "Okay, but you gave her the number, right? You let her use it before?" "Yes, but—" "Look, son," he interrupted, his voice laced with impatience. "We can't get involved in every lover's spat. You gave your girlfriend your credit card, she used it. You two need to work it out. If you want to pursue it, you can take her to small claims court. It's a civil matter." There it was again, that phrase, a civil matter. It was a brick wall, a legal dead end. It was the system telling me that because I'd loved someone, because I'd trusted them, any crime they committed against me was just a messy breakup. I was a fool, and the world was designed to let fools be fleeced. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. The silence in the apartment pressed in. The croissants she'd brought sat on the counter, a sick joke. I was alone, dismissed, and nearly 10 grand in the hole. The institutions I thought would protect me had shrugged and turned their backs. The fear I felt wasn't of Chloe. It was the terrifying realization that there was no safety net. No one was coming to help. The rules didn't apply. And as that cold, stark reality settled in my bones, the rage I felt began to change. It cooled, sharpened. If it was a civil matter, then I'd be civil, my own kind of civil. I picked up my phone again, the airline's booking confirmation glowing on the screen. The system wouldn't give me justice. Fine, I'd create my own. I didn't call Bali Air. Not yet. I just sat on the couch, my laptop open on the coffee table, the booking confirmation glowing with its two treacherous names. My mind was a blank, a landscape of scorched earth where a future used to be. The system had failed, the social contract was broken, and all that was left was the raw, transactional truth Chloe had thrown in my face. You're a human, ATM. An ATM doesn't get mad, it doesn't feel hurt, it just dispenses. But if a transaction is fraudulent, it can be reversed, or better yet, amended. I clicked on the Manage My Booking link. A simple form asked for the booking reference and the lead passenger's last name, Williams. I typed it in, my fingers steady. Their entire betrayal was laid out before me. Seat assignments, meal preferences she'd already selected, vegan for her, standard for him. And two little buttons, cancel flight or change flight. My cursor hovered over the second option. That's when I heard it again, the key in the lock. My blood ran cold. She couldn't be that arrogant. But the door swung open, and there she was, framed in the doorway. And she wasn't alone. Standing slightly behind her, a proprietary hand on her waist, was a guy who could only be Derek. He was exactly what I'd pictured. Taller than me, broader shoulders, with a jawline that looked like it had been chiseled from granite, and a smug, self-satisfied smirk that I instantly wanted to wipe off his face. He was wearing a tight-fitting V-neck and jeans, a walking cliché of the guy who thinks he's God's gift. "Forgot my suitcase," Chloe said, her voice breezy as if she were just popping back for a misplaced umbrella. She didn't look at me, instead directing her words to a spot on the wall somewhere above my head. "Derek's giving me a hand." Derek's eyes swept over the apartment, over me, a flicker of amusement in his gaze. He was sizing up the territory he'd just conquered, my home, my couch, my life. "Hey man," he said, the words dripping with false sincerity. "No hard feelings, right?" He then had the audacity to wink at me. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat was a knot of unshed words and pure, unadulterated hatred. This was my safe space, the place I came to unwind, to feel secure. And they were standing in it, a team, treating me like a concierge at a hotel they were checking out of. They moved past me toward the bedroom, their voices low and punctuated by Chloe's occasional laugh. It was a sharp, intimate sound that twisted in my gut. I could hear the scrape of her large suitcase being dragged from the closet, the rustle of clothes being pulled from drawers. They were in my bedroom. Our bedroom. The thought made me physically ill. "Babe, did you pack the sunscreen?" Derek called out from the bedroom, his voice loud enough for me to hear clearly. "I don't want to fry on that Bali sun." "It's in the bathroom cabinet!" "And don't forget the bug spray," Chloe called back. "I am not getting eaten alive in some jungle." They were talking about it, right here, in my home. They were planning the details of the trip I was paying for while standing 10 feet away from me. The heat, the sun, the jungle. The sheer, unmitigated gall of it was breathtaking. It wasn't just an affair, it was a performance, and I was the captive audience. My eyes snapped back to the laptop screen. Change flight! My rage had found its focus. It wasn't a hot, blinding fury anymore. It was a block of ice. Bali was hot. Bali was a beach. Bali was their paradise. I clicked the button. A new search form appeared, from Our City to Enter Destination. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I didn't search for other tropical islands or romantic European cities. I thought of the opposite of Bali, the opposite of sun, the opposite of a fun, sexy getaway. I typed in Anchorage, Alaska. A list of flights appeared. There was one leaving on the same day, just a few hours later than their original Bali flight. The change fee was negligible, and there was even a small price difference in my favor. A credit of $124.38 would be refunded to my American Express card. It was perfect. It was poetry. From the bedroom, I heard Chloe's voice, laced with condescending pity. "You know, you should really get out more. See the world." "Damn right," Derek added. "Thanks for the upgrade, by the way. First class is going to be sick." First class. She'd upgraded them to first class. The ice in my veins turned to liquid nitrogen. With 3 decisive clicks, it was done. The flight to Bali was gone. The first-class seats to paradise were vaporized. In their place were 2 economy tickets to Anchorage, Alaska, for a trip in mid-November. The confirmation page loaded, complete with a weather forecast for their destination. High of 19 degrees Fahrenheit, low of 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Mostly cloudy with a chance of soul-crushing despair. I forwarded the new e-tickets to a private email address, then closed the laptop. They emerged from the bedroom a few minutes later, Derek dragging her ridiculously oversized suitcase. They were laughing about something. "All right, we're out of here," Chloe announced. She paused and gave me a look that was meant to be sympathetic but was just insulting. "Try not to be so dramatic about this, okay? It's for the best." I just looked at her, my face a perfect mask of neutrality. I gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Let her think it was defeat. Let them both think they'd won. They walked out the door, and the lock clicked shut for the final time. The silence that filled the apartment now was different. It wasn't empty, it was full. It was humming with the energy of a perfectly set trap, a punchline to a joke they didn't even know they were a part of. I thought about them, decked out in their shorts and flip-flops, stepping off a plane not into the humid embrace of Bali, but into the brutal, unforgiving Alaskan cold. And for the first time in 24 hours, I smiled. The silence in the apartment was a clean slate. For a few minutes I basked in it, the lingering scent of Chloe's perfume, the smug ghost of Derek's wink. It all started to fade, replaced by the clean, sharp scent of victory. The small credit that posted back to my Amex was the cherry on top. It wasn't just a refund, it was a fee, my fee, for services rendered in the complete and total demolition of their fantasy. But the silence didn't stay comforting for long. It stretched, thinned, and became the same oppressive quiet I'd been left in before. I was still alone. I was still out thousands of dollars. The revenge, as sweet as it was, had been a digital, disembodied act. A few clicks on a laptop. I hadn't seen her face. I hadn't heard the confusion in her voice. The trap was set. But if a tree falls in the Alaskan wilderness and the person who sent you there isn't around to hear it, does it make a sound? I needed to hear it. I needed to see it. I glanced at the clock. Their original flight was in 4 hours. They'd be heading to the airport soon, probably in a ridiculously expensive Uber I'd end up paying for when the monthly statement came. They'd be giddy, anticipating the first-class champagne and the warm Bali air. They'd be dressed for the beach. The thought sent a fresh jolt of energy through me. This was my window, my chance to move this from a civil matter to a spectator sport. I grabbed my keys and a baseball cap, pulling the brim down low. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to say a word. I was just going to bear witness. I was going to be the only person in the entire airport who knew that the two beautiful, smiling people checking in for their tropical vacation were about to have their world turned into a frozen hellscape. The drive to the airport was surreal. Every song on the radio seemed to be about love or heartbreak or betrayal. I turned it off, preferring the hum of the engine. I felt strangely calm, detached, like a scientist on his way to observe the final, explosive stage of an experiment. I replayed their words in my head. You're boring. Derek's fun. Thanks for the upgrade. First class is going to be sick. Think of it as alimony. Each memory was another log on the fire of my resolve. I parked in the short-term garage and made my way into the international terminal. It was bustling with the usual mix of tearful goodbyes and excited greetings. I found a coffee shop with a clear line of sight to the Bali Air check-in counters. I ordered a black coffee, the steam warming my cold hands, and I waited. It took less than 20 minutes. I saw them before I really saw them. I saw the aura of their entitlement first, the way they breezed through the sliding doors, laughing, Derek with his arm slung casually around Chloe's shoulder. She was wearing a white sundress and sandals, a floppy sun hat in her hand. He had on linen shorts and a t-shirt that was 2 sizes too small. They looked radiant, obnoxious, and utterly clueless. They looked like a before and after photo, and I was about to provide the after. They queued up in the first-class line, their mountain of luggage in tow. Chloe was scrolling on her phone, probably picking out an Instagram filter for the wheels up photo she was planning to post. Derek was scanning the crowd with a bored superiority. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of anticipation. This was it. This was the moment. They were next in line. Chloe flashed a brilliant smile at the check-in agent. Hi there, checking in for the flight to Denpasar. 2, first class. The name is Williams. The agent, a polite woman with a professional smile, nodded and began typing. I leaned forward in my seat, my coffee forgotten. The agent's fingers paused. Her brow furrowed slightly. She typed again, more slowly this time. She looked from her screen, to Chloe's expectant face, and then back to her screen. "Williams, you said?" the agent asked, her professional smile tightening just a fraction. "For Denpasar?" "That's right," Chloe said, her own smile starting to waver. "Flight BA 482. The agent shook her head slowly. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't have a Chloe Williams or a Derek Vance on the flight to Denpasar." She leaned in, squinting at her monitor. "I do have you here, but your flight isn't to Bali." Chloe's laugh was brittle, a crack in her perfect facade. "That's funny, Anchorage? No, it's Denpasar. Bali. Maybe the system is just slow to update." She leaned in, trying to charm the agent, a tactic that had always worked on me. "It's our anniversary trip. First class. You can imagine we're very excited to get there." The agent's face was a mask of polite indifference. She tapped her screen one more time. "Ma'am, I can assure you, the booking is confirmed. Passenger Chloe Williams and passenger Derek Vance. 2 seats, 23A and 23B, in economy class on flight AK 765 to Ted Stevens, Anchorage International Airport. Your baggage allowance is 1 checked bag per person. It looks like you have 4. She gestured to the mountain of luggage. "There will be an additional charge for that." The words economy class and Anchorage seemed to suck all the air out of the space around them. Derek, who had been looking smugly at his phone, finally looked up. "Anchorage? What the hell is an Anchorage?" he asked, a frown creasing his chiseled brow. Chloe didn't answer him. Her face had gone chalk white beneath her spray tan. The brilliant smile was gone, replaced by a slack-jawed horror. Her eyes, wide with panic, started darting around the terminal. A frantic search. She was looking for an explanation, for an enemy, for the source of this catastrophic system failure. And then, she found me. Our eyes locked across the expanse of polished floor and bustling travelers. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat. I just held her gaze, took a slow sip of my coffee, and gave her the slightest, most deliberate nod. It was the same nod I'd given her hours before in the apartment. The nod of a man accepting the terms. Alimony, she'd called it. Transaction complete. Recognition slammed into her like a physical blow. The last shred of her composure disintegrated. "You!" The word was a shriek, sharp and ugly, turning heads for 50 feet in every direction. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "You bastard! You did this!" Derek looked from her to me, his brain finally catching up. The smugness evaporated, replaced by a baffled fury. "Did what? What is she talking about? Who is that guy?" "He changed the tickets!" Chloe screamed, ignoring the check-in agent who was now speaking quietly into a radio. "He paid for them and he changed them." The truth, messy and pathetic, was finally out, splattered all over the pristine floor of the first-class check-in line. Derek stared at her, the last pieces of the puzzle clicking into place for him. His face went from confusion to humiliation to pure rage in the span of 5 seconds. "He paid for them? He paid? You told me you booked this. You told me he was your crazy ex." "He is," she wailed, her voice cracking. "He's a psycho." "A psycho whose credit card you're using to take me on vacation," Derek shot back, his voice low and venomous. He looked at her sundress, at his own linen shorts, then back at me, the quiet man in a baseball cap. He looked at their 4 oversized suitcases filled with beachwear. Then he seemed to hear the agent's words for the first time. "Anchorage, it's November, it's freezing in Alaska." The sheer idiotic totality of their situation washed over him. He looked like he'd been slapped. People were openly staring now, phones subtly being raised. The agent was speaking firmly. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice." But Chloe was beyond reason. She was trapped, exposed, and humiliated. Her beautiful face was twisted into a mask of pure hate, all of it directed at me. "I'm going to kill you," she screamed, taking a step toward me before Derek grabbed her arm. "Just stop, Chloe. You've made us look like complete idiots," he hissed, yanking her back. He let go of her arm as if she were toxic. He looked at me one last time, his eyes filled not with the anger of a rival, but the deep, burning shame of a man who realizes he's been played for a fool just as much as I had. He was just a different kind of collateral damage. That was my cue. I had seen what I came to see. The transaction was finalized. The account was settled. I stood up, dropped my empty coffee cup into the trash, and walked toward the exit without a backward glance. The sound of their arguing, her shrieks of fury, his raw shouts of betrayal, was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a civil matter being resolved. My way. I didn't run, I walked. Each step was measured, deliberate. The cacophony of their argument faded behind me, swallowed by the terminal's cavernous echo and the announcements for other flights, other lives. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The image of Chloe's face, contorted with a rage born from pure humiliation, was burned onto the inside of my eyelids. The sound of Derek's voice, cracked with the shame of a man realizing he was just a pawn, was a symphony. The cool air of the parking garage felt like a splash of water on a feverish face. I got into my car and just sat there, my hands gripping the steering wheel. They weren't trembling with rage anymore. They were shaking with the aftershock of it all. The adrenaline, that cold, diamond-hard resolve that had carried me through the last several hours, drained away, leaving a hollow, buzzing exhaustion in its place. The silence in the car was absolute. The victory, as sweet and total as it had been, didn't fill the void. It just illuminated it. I was still alone. I was still the guy who had been played for a fool for 2 years. The revenge was a balm, but the wound was still there, deep and raw. I drove home on autopilot, the city lights blurring past the windows. Back in the apartment, the silence was waiting for me. I saw the indent on the couch where she used to sit, the empty space on the counter where her keys used to be. For a moment, the crushing weight of it all threatened to return. Then, my phone buzzed. A notification from a news app, then another from a social media platform. Curiosity, or maybe just a need for distraction, made me look. My thumb froze on the screen. It was a video, already rocketing through the internet, titled, "Airport Karen Melts Down Over Cancelled Bali Trip." I clicked play. The video was shaky, filmed on someone's phone from across the check-in area, but the audio was crystal clear. There it was, my life's drama, playing out for the world to see. I watched myself, a distant figure in a baseball cap, taking a slow sip of coffee. I watched Chloe's face crumble. And then I heard it, her shriek, You bastard! You did this!" The camera zoomed in on her. "He changed the tickets!" she screamed, her voice a raw, ragged spear of sound. "He paid for them, and he changed them!" Then Derek's voice, a low, venomous counterpoint. "He paid. You told me you booked this. You told me he was your crazy ex." His words, drenched in the dawning horror of his own stupidity. A psycho whose credit card you're using to take me on vacation? I watched the whole pathetic spectacle again and again. It wasn't just my word against hers anymore. It wasn't a civil matter. It was a public confession. It was evidence. Her own mouth had convicted her. The system hadn't failed me. I just hadn't given it the right tools. With a newfound steadiness, I picked up my phone. I dialed the number for American Express, navigating the same automated menu. This time, I wasn't desperate. I was armed. "American Express Fraud Department, this is Brenda." I almost laughed. "Brenda, we spoke earlier about a charge from Bali Air." "Yes, sir, I remember," she said, her voice still unnervingly calm. "As I explained, because you had an established relationship with Ms. Williams." "That's where you're wrong, Brenda," I interrupted, my voice level and cold. "It's no longer a domestic dispute. It's now a public spectacle. I'm going to send you a link to a video that is currently trending on every major social media platform. In it, you will hear Ms. Williams loudly and repeatedly admitting that she used my card, that I paid for the tickets, and you will hear her partner confirming that she lied to him about it. It's a full confession of fraudulent intent, witnessed by about 100 people and a few million more online." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint clicking of her keyboard. I emailed her the link. "Check your inbox, Brenda." Another pause, longer this time. I imagined her watching it, hearing the screams, seeing the whole ugly truth laid bare. When she finally spoke, the practiced corporate calm was gone. Her voice was different, human. "Oh my," she said, a soft note of shock in her tone. "I see." "One moment, sir." She was gone for less than a minute. "Sir, I've reviewed the new information you've provided. We've gone ahead and processed a full chargeback for the Bali Air purchase. The funds will be credited back to your account within 24 hours. We've also flagged the transaction as fraudulent. I am so sorry you had to go through this." I hung up the phone. It was over. All of it. The charge was reversed. The system, once I'd forced its hand, had worked. I looked around the quiet apartment. It didn't feel empty anymore. It felt clean. It felt like mine. She had called me a human ATM. She was right. But she'd forgotten the most important rule. The bank always wins. The money was back in my account before the sun came up. The video had peaked, shared and memed into oblivion, and then, as quickly as it had appeared, it was replaced by the next viral sensation. My 15 minutes of vicarious fame were over. The apartment was mine. The debt was erased. I had won. By every conceivable metric, I had achieved a total victory. But victory, I was learning, is a lonely roommate. The first few days were a blur of manic cleaning. I threw out everything she'd ever given me. The ceramic bowl by the door. The overpriced espresso machine she'd insisted we needed. I stripped the bed, tossing the sheets and duvet she'd picked out into a black trash bag. I scrubbed the bathroom until my knuckles were raw, trying to erase the ghost of Derek using my shower, calling out for the sunscreen I had paid for. Each discarded object felt like a small triumph, but the pile of trash bags by the door just looked like a monument to my own stupidity. My identity as a provider, the quiet satisfaction I used to get from taking care of someone, was now a source of deep, corrosive shame. It felt like a character flaw, a pre-existing condition that she had expertly diagnosed and exploited. A week after the airport incident, I went out for dinner with a colleague. When the bill came, he reached for his wallet. "My treat," he said. "For, you know everything." I flinched. The simple act of generosity felt like pity, like a transaction. I insisted on splitting it, my voice sharper than I intended. The easy comfort of providing had been replaced by a bristling, paranoid vigilance. My American Express card stayed in my wallet, feeling less like a tool and more like a liability, a weakness. The nights were the worst. Sleep offered no escape, only a different kind of torment. I'd dream I was back in the airport, but the terminal was empty except for me, Chloe, and Derek. They wouldn't be yelling, they'd be laughing, that easy, intimate laugh they shared in my hallway. Chloe would turn to me, her eyes full of that cold contempt, and say, "You see, he's fun." In the dream, I'd open my mouth to say something, but all that would come out was the whirring, mechanical sound of a cash machine. Paper money would spew from my lips, and they'd scoop it up, still laughing, as I suffocated on my own generosity. I'd wake up gasping, my heart hammering against my ribs, the sheets twisted around me and soaked in a cold sweat. The quiet of the apartment, once so clean and satisfying, began to feel like a pressure chamber. Every creak of the floorboards, every siren in the distance, sent a jolt of anxiety through me. I'd find myself checking the lock on the front door 3, 4 times before bed. I'd jump when my phone buzzed with a notification. The world, which had once felt knowable and secure, now seemed filled with hidden traps and untrustworthy faces. I had exposed her lies, but in doing so, I'd only revealed my own profound vulnerability. I had proven to the world, and to myself, just how easily I could be fooled. The revenge was a spectacular, fiery explosion. But I was the one left standing at ground zero, breathing in the ash. The dreams didn't stop, but they changed. The laughing faces of Chloe and Derek faded, replaced by the bored, dismissive voice of the police officer. "It's a civil matter, son." The words echoed in the quiet of my apartment, a constant reminder that my humiliation wasn't just personal, it was systemic. American Express had seen the truth, but they were a corporation protecting their bottom line. The police, the very institution meant to draw the line between right and wrong, had just shrugged. This loose end frayed at the edges of my sanity. The victory felt incomplete. A house built on an unstable foundation. I had proven Chloe was a thief to a credit card company, to the internet, and to Derek. But I hadn't proven it to the law. Her crime was still officially just a lover's spat. That quiet, institutional dismissal was, in its own way, as insulting as her sneer. My resolve hardened again, but this time it wasn't about revenge. It was about order. I printed everything. The original booking confirmation, the flight change confirmation, the statement from Amex showing the charge and the subsequent fraud-related credit, and a high-resolution still from the viral video showing Chloe's face mid-scream. I put it all in a neat manila folder and drove to the police precinct. The desk sergeant looked exactly like he sounded on the phone, middle-aged, overweight, and radiating an aura of profound boredom. He was staring at a crossword puzzle when I approached. "I need to file a report for fraud," I said, my voice even. He didn't look up. "What kind of fraud?" "Credit card fraud, nearly $10,000. He finally lifted his eyes, his gaze sweeping over me with weary appraisal. "Was your card stolen?" "No. My ex-girlfriend used the number, which was stored for other purposes, to purchase a vacation for herself and another man." A flicker of something, not quite recognition, but a familiar sort of dismissal, crossed his face. "Right. So it's a domestic thing. You two need to work it out. It's a civil matter." There it was, the same brick wall, the same phrase that had neutered my initial plea for help, but this time I was prepared. "No," I said, my voice dropping a little, becoming colder. "It is not a civil matter. It is a criminal matter. American Express, whose fraud department has slightly more experience with these things than you do, has already determined it to be felony fraud and reversed the charge." I slid the manila folder onto the counter. I opened it and tapped the first document, the Amex statement. "Here is the charge. Here is the reversal, coded as fraudulent." I turned the page. "Here is the perpetrator, Chloe Williams, publicly admitting to the crime." I tapped the still from the video. Her face was a perfect mask of guilt and rage. The sergeant's eyes widened slightly. He picked up the photo, then looked back at me. "Is this from that video, the airport lady?" "The very same," I said. "I'm the bastard who did this. When I called a few days ago, one of your officers told me it was a lover's spat and to take her to small claims court. He called me, son, and hung up on me. He didn't ask for my name, he didn't ask for her name, he didn't take a single note. He just decided, based on his own personal bias, that financial abuse between partners isn't a real crime." I leaned in, my voice low but carrying the weight of every sleepless night. "So, I am not asking you, I am telling you, you are going to take my statement. You are going to file a report for grand larceny by fraudulent use of a credit card. And you are going to give me a form to file a formal complaint against the officer who decided he was a better arbiter of the law than the law itself." He stared at me, then down at the folder. He picked up the Amex statement again, his finger tracing the nearly 5-figure sum. He looked at Chloe's screaming face. The bureaucratic indifference in his eyes finally gave way to a grudging professionalism. He saw the paperwork, he saw the evidence, he saw a man who wasn't going to be dismissed. Without another word, he reached under the counter and pulled out a stack of forms. He pushed them toward me with a heavy sigh. "Start with this one," he grumbled, his pen finally leaving the crossword puzzle untouched. "It's gonna take a while." It wasn't a dramatic victory. There was no screaming, no public humiliation. It was just the quiet, methodical process of paperwork. But as I sat there under the buzzing fluorescent lights, filling in names and dates and dollar amounts, I felt the last piece of the broken world click back into place. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. It was about turning a civil matter back into a crime and a victim back into a survivor. 2 months passed. The viral video became old news, and Chloe Williams, the airport Karen, became a forgotten meme. The legal process, unlike the internet, has a much longer memory. After I filed the report, the police, armed with a public confession and a corporate fraud claim, actually did their jobs. A warrant was issued. Last I heard through the DA's office, she was facing a felony charge and had pleaded not guilty. Derek, it turned out, wasn't named in the complaint. He was just the world's dumbest plus one. Their relationship, I imagine, did not survive its inaugural flight to Anchorage. The quiet in my apartment was no longer a pressure chamber, it was just quiet. I'd started seeing a therapist, a woman named Dr. Anya Sharma, who had a knack for cutting through my bullshit. "Your instinct to provide for a partner isn't a flaw," she told me last week, her pen poised over a notepad. "The flaw was in valuing the transaction more than the relationship. You weren't investing in a future, you were paying to avoid asking difficult questions." She was right. I had used my Amex as a shield, hoping my generosity would protect me from the truths I didn't want to see. I sold the big, uncomfortable couch Chloe had picked out and bought a simple, well-made leather armchair. Just one. It sits in the living room, a statement of comfortable solitude. It's where I was sitting when I found myself scrolling through travel websites. For weeks, any ad depicting a beach or a smiling couple had sent a jolt of sour adrenaline through me. But this time, something was different. I saw a picture of the Scottish Highlands, all misty green hills, ancient stone, and a vast, moody sky, and I didn't feel dread. I felt a pull. I thought about the pictures of Bali she'd shown me, all bright, manufactured perfection. It was never about a place. It was about a fantasy she wanted someone else to fund. The Highlands looked real, weathered, and beautifully imperfect. It looked like a place you went to find something, not just to be seen. On a whim, I started planning a trip. A rental car, a string of small inns, a good pair of hiking boots. A trip for one. When it came time to book the flight, I paused. The total appeared on the screen, a significant but manageable number. My hand went to my wallet, and I felt the cool, smooth rectangle of my American Express card. The ghost of a $10,000 betrayal whispered in my ear. For a moment, the old fear returned, the feeling of a trap being set. Then I thought of Dr. Sharma's words. You were paying to avoid asking difficult questions. This wasn't an avoidance. This was an answer. This wasn't for her. It wasn't for a fragile transactional us. It was for me. I took a deep breath, pulled out the card and typed the numbers in, my hand perfectly steady. The purchase wasn't an investment in a lie. It was an investment in myself. It was me providing. For me. The confirmation email arrived a moment later. Passenger 1, my name. I looked at it, then looked around my quiet apartment, at my single armchair and the empty space where her things used to be. It didn't feel empty. It felt clear. The wound was still there, a faint scar I'd carry for a long time. But it no longer ached. It was just a part of my own weathered, imperfect, and very real landscape. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to go exploring. A year has passed since the Great Alaskan Meltdown. Chloe took a plea deal, grand larceny, downgraded from a felony to a misdemeanor after she paid court-ordered restitution, which I imagine was financed by her parents. The conviction came with probation and a permanent stain on her record. I never saw her again. I never heard from Derek again. They exist now only as pixels in a forgotten viral video and a faint, bitter taste in my memory. Life is quiet now, but it's a different kind of quiet. It's the calm of a lake after a storm, not the silence of a vacuum. Dr. Sharma was right. My generosity wasn't the problem. My blindness was. I had been paying for a performance, and when the show was over, I was left in an empty theater. Now I buy tickets only for myself. The trip to Scotland was everything Bali wouldn't have been. It was real. I stood on the Isle of Skye, the wind whipping at my face, looking out over a landscape that was brutally, breathtakingly beautiful. It wasn't a postcard. It was a presence. It didn't care if I was there or not, and I found a strange comfort in that. I hiked until my legs ached, I ate in pubs where no one knew my name, and I read books in my single armchair. I was a provider, providing myself with peace. I was an investor, investing in my own recovery. Last night, I was clearing out an old junk drawer and found a photo of Chloe and me from that first year. We were smiling, and for a second I felt the familiar phantom ache of what I thought I'd lost. She looked at me in the photo with that gaze, the one that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. I used to think that look was a priceless treasure. Now I know it was just a very convincing sales pitch. I looked at the man in the photo, the smiling, gullible fool so desperate to be a provider that he couldn't see he was just a customer. I didn't hate him. I felt a pang of pity and then a quiet surge of pride for the man he had been forced to become. I dropped the photo into the trash. My life isn't a grand romance or a revenge thriller anymore. It's smaller, truer. It's the satisfaction of a well-made cup of coffee in the morning, the comfort of my own company, the freedom of a future that is entirely unwritten and entirely my own. The account is settled. The books are balanced. I am, for the first time in a long time, solvent. It's a hell of a story, isn't it? About getting played and then learning how to play the game. If you've ever had your own account settled or if you just enjoyed the ride, you know what to do. Hit that like and subscribe, because my story is finally my own again, and I'm just getting started.